बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम अस्सलाम वालेकुम। कैसे हैं आप? This is lecture number 17. Let's start. So let us take review of last lecture. In last lecture we discussed the relationship between central movements, which are also called mean movements, and the movements about origin, and then we discussed the movement ratios beta 1 and beta 2, and then we discussed the skewness, which is a measure of asymmetry. If the value of skewness is 0, then the distribution is called symmetric. If it is greater than 0 or positive, then it is called positively skewed or right skewed distribution. And if the value of skewness is negative or less than 0, then it is called negatively skewed or left skewed distribution. And then we discussed the kurtosis, which is a measure of peakedness of a curve. So if the value of kurtosis is 3, then we say that it is matching, it is the normal distribution, or kurtosis, or we can say that kurtosis is matching with the normal distributions kurtosis. So if it is greater than 3, then it means that the peak of the curve under study is higher than the normal distribution, normal curve's peak. So it is called leptokurtic. And if the value of kurtosis is less than 3, then it means the peak of the curve under study is lower than the normal curve. So it is called the platykurtic. So if it is 3, then it means it is matching with the normal curve peak. So it is called the mesokurtic. And then we also discussed the concept of excess kurtosis, which is the kurtosis minus 3. And in case of normal distribution, the value of kurtosis is, excess kurtosis is 0, while the value of kurtosis is 3. So now let us discuss the objectives of the current lecture. In the current lecture we will discuss how to describe a frequency distribution using the movements and the skewness and kurtosis, and then we will move to the probability, and we will introduce you to the concept of probability, and then we will also discuss some related definitions and the concepts which are related to the probability. So first, how to describe a frequency distribution. To describe the major characteristics of a frequency distribution, we need to calculate the following 5 quantities. Number 1, the total number of observations in the data. Number 2, a measure of central tendency, for example mean, median, mode, etc. So this central tendency, it provides the information about the center or average value of the data. And number 3, a measure of dispersion, for example variance, standard deviations, mean deviations, quartile deviations, etc. So this measure of dispersion indicates the spread of the data around their central value or the mean value. And number 4, a measure of skewness, that shows lack of symmetry in frequency distributions, whether distribution is right skewed or it is left skewed, or if it is symmetric. And last one, number 5, is a measure of kurtosis, that gives information about its peakedness. So we need to know these 5 quantities in order to describe the major characteristics of a frequency distributions. So it is very interesting to note that all these quantities, they can be derived from the first 4 movements. So for example, the first movement about 0 is the arithmetic mean, while the second movement about mean, which is also called the central movement, it is the variance. The third standardized movement is a measure of skewness, and the fourth standardized movement is a measure of kurtosis. So thus first 4 movements play a very vital role in describing a frequency distribution. So this is one very important point to note. We have been discussing the measures of central tendency, the measures of dispersion, the movements, the skewness and kurtosis. So with the help of all these quantities, we can get the major characteristic of a frequency distribution. So we can explain our data properly using all these measures. So this is the main advantage of studying all these topics. So now let us come to one very important topic of the statistics, which is the probability. So probability, or it is also called likelihood, it is a measure or estimation of how likely it is that something will happen or that a statement is true. So for example, it is very likely to rain today, or I have a fair chance of passing annual examination, or Mr. A will probably win a prize, etc. So these types of sentences are very common in our real life. So in each of these statements, the natural state of likelihood is expressed. So that what are the chances of a rain today, or what are the chances of passing an exam in the annual examination, or what are the chances that Mr. A will win a certain prize. So probabilities, they are given a value between 0 and 1, where 0 means 0% chance, or it will not happen, and 1 means 100% chance, or it will happen. So higher the degree of probability, the more likely the event is to happen. So or in a longer series of samples, the greater the number of times such event is expected to happen. So suppose the probability is 50%, so or 0.5, then it means that there are 50% chance that certain event will occur. So if the probability is close to 0%, then it means that there are very low chances of the occurrence of that particular event. If the probability is close to 1%, close to 1 or 100%, suppose probability is 90%, then it means that there are it is most likely, or there are more chances of occurrence of that particular event. So probability is used widely in different fields such as mathematics, statistics, economics, management, finance, operation research, sociology, psychology, astronomy, physics, engineering, gambling, and artificial intelligence and machine learning, to draw inferences about the expected frequencies of events. So probability is very important in our daily life. So probability theory is best understood through the application of modern set theory. So first we need to study some basic concepts, notations, and operations of set theory that are related to probability. So first I am going to explain some basic definitions and concepts which are related to set theory, and then we will use these concepts in order to study the probability, and at that time we will be able to learn probability more easily if we have these concepts in our hand. So let us discuss the first concept of set theory, that is a set. So what is a set? A set is a well-defined collection of or list of distinct objects. So it is a collection of different objects. So for example, a group of students, or the number of books in a library, or the integer, all integers between 1 and 100. So the objects that are in a set are called members of the set or the elements of the set. So in this first example, a group of students, so in this case the students are the members of this set or they are the elements of this set. And similarly in the second example, number of books in a library, so the books are the members or the elements of this set. Similarly, the set of integers between 1 and 100, so all integers from between 1 to 100, 1 and 100, they are the members or the elements of this set. So objects that are in set are called members or elements of that particular set. So sets are usually denoted by capital letters of English alphabet such as A, B, C, and so on, Z, etc., while their elements are represented by small letters such as small a, B, C, and Z, etc. So elements are enclosed by braces to represent a set. So for example, let A is a set having 4 elements, A, B, C, and Z, and note that these elements they are enclosed by the braces. Similarly, we have another set B containing 5 elements, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, and these elements they are enclosed within the braces. So if X is an element of set A, then symbolically we write it as X, E for element, and then A. So X is an element A. We can also read it as X belongs to A, or X is in A, or X is an element of A. So similarly, if X is not an element of a set A, then we write it as X not element with cross on E, which is, we can read it as X does not belong to A, or X is not in A. So next we discuss the null set, or also called empty set. A set containing no elements is called null set, and it is denoted by this symbol which is called phi. So we can also denote this phi as this empty set as with the curly braces or curly brackets, and within these brackets there is no element. So this symbol and this symbol both are used to denote a null set or the empty set. There is one very important point to note, that here this set is not an empty set. Why? Because it has one element which is 0. So 0 is an element. So 0 doesn't mean that we have an empty set. So empty set mean it has no element. So next we discuss the singleton set, which is also called a unit set. A set containing only one element is called singleton set. So for example, we have a set A having only one element which is 1, or we have set B having element 3. So a set having only one element is called a singleton set, or it is also called unit set. Now we can represent sets in different notations. So suppose A is a set containing elements X. So X is the element in set A, and then vertical bar. This means such that. So this means such that, and then after this bar, vertical bar, we need to represent the required condition. So A is a set containing x elements such that x is an odd number and x is less than 12. So odd number less than 12. So it means we can write it as all the odd numbers less than 12. So it is 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11. So we can represent set in either of the two forms. This form has a special name which is called set builder form. So similarly, suppose we have another set B. So B is equal to x such that x is a month of the year. So it means here in this case this B is equal to January, February, March, April up to December. And similarly we have another set C containing 10 numbers from 1, 2, 3 up to 10. So these are some examples of set. Next, one very important concept is subsets. So a set A is called a subset of set B if every element of set A is also an element of set B. So suppose we have set A 1, 2, 3 and set B 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we can see that set A has 3 elements 1, 2, 3, set B has 5 elements 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So from this notation we can see that every element of set A is also an element of set B. So we can say that A is a subset of B, and this is denoted by A is subset of B, or B is superset of A. So this symbol is used for subset, and this reverse symbol it is used for superset. So A is subset of B, it means A is contained in B, or B is a superset A, or B contains A. So we can see that A is a subset of B. So equal sets. Two sets are said to be equal if A is subset of B and B is also subset of A. So then the sets will be equal. So for example, we have set A 1, 2 and 3 and set B which is 3, 1, 2. So you can see that every element of set A 1, 2, 3 it is also an element of set B. So it means A is subset of B, and also every element of B is also an element of set A. So this means B is also subset of A. So using these two results, since A is subset of B, B is subset of A, we can say that A is equal to B. Next we discuss another important concept, which is the universal set or the space. So a large set of which all the sets we talk about are subsets is called the universal set or space. It is denoted by S as for space, or this Greek letter omega. This is called omega. So the universal set thus contains all possible elements under consideration. So next we discuss the concept of Venn diagrams. So Venn diagrams are used to represent sets and subsets in a pictorial way and to verify the relationship among sets and subsets. So just representing different sets and different subsets in the form of a diagram then the obtained diagram is called the Venn diagram. So this Venn diagram it gives us the relationship between different sets. So in Venn diagram, a rectangle is used to represent the universal set or the space S, whereas the sets are represented by circular regions. So here in this case you can see that this triangle is our universal set, which is labeled as S, and within this triangle we have two sets, set A and set B. So this is overall a simple Venn diagram. So next we discuss different operations on sets using Venn diagram. So here, as far as this first Venn diagram is concerned, we have a rectangle which is our simple universal set or space, and it is S, and we have two sets A and B. Suppose we are interested in calculating A union B. So A union B means that we are interested in finding the area which is occur in A or in B. So it means we need to take this full area. So in this case both A and B are included. So but if we are interested in calculating A intersection B, so suppose we have here set A and here is another set B. So you can see that this middle portion, it is common in both A and B. So intersection mean this cap sign, it is called intersection, the reverse U. So intersection mean the common region in A and B. So as far as another example is concerned, suppose we have another Venn diagram where this is some space. Here this is set A, we have set B. So if we are interested in calculating A intersection B in this case, so from this Venn diagram you can see that there is nothing common in both sets A and B. So it means the A intersection B is empty. So if there is something common, so then highlight that particular region. And if there is nothing common, then it means that their intersection is an empty set. And as far as this example is concerned, union mean we need to shade the area under A as well as under B. So let us take another example. So this is our space or universal set. Here we have set A, here we have set B. Now we are interested in calculating A union B. So in order to find A union B, we need to shade A as well as we need to shade B. So this is A union B. Next, operations on sets. So A complement. This A dash is A complement, or we can also use AC. So A complement mean it is defined as S minus A. So just subtract A from S. So here this full region is S. So from this full region we need to skip this A area, and we have to consider this full area. Rest of the area is included in our analysis. So only area which we have to skip is the region A. So alternatively, suppose we have this space S or universal set S. So if we have set A here, we are interested in finding A complement or AC. So it means we need to shade all the area other than A. So this will be A complement. So next, A minus B or A difference B. So suppose here we have set A, here we have set B. So A minus B means we have to subtract that area of B which is in common in A. So A minus B means you can see that this middle area, it is the common area of A and B. So we need to subtract B from A, so it means we have to focus only on area A by omitting the area B. So this shaded region is our A minus B in this case. So you can see that I have removed the area of B from the area of A. Similarly, if you have this space S, if you have A here and B here, and suppose you want to find B minus A, so it means you need to subtract that area of A which is common in B. So in that case the Venn diagram will look like this. So we need to subtract this area. So next we discuss some laws of the sets. So let A, B and C be any subsets of a universal set S, then the following laws hold. Number 1, commutative law. So commutative law mean A union B is same as B union A, and similarly A intersection B is same as B intersection A. This is called commutative law with respect to union, and this second one is called commutative law with respect to intersection. So if you interchange the positions of set A and B, so the result will not be affected. So A union B is same as B union A, yeah, A intersection B is same as B intersection A. So next we discuss the associative law. So it is A union B union C equals to A union B union C, and here we first need to calculate B union C, and then the resultant of this B union C will be combined with A. But here on the right hand side, first we need to calculate A union B, and then the resultant will be combined with C. So this is called associative law of union of sets, and here we have the associative property or associative law of intersection of set. A intersection B intersection C is same as A intersection B intersection C. So here first we need to calculate intersection of B and C, and on right hand side we need to calculate intersection of A and B first. Next is the distributive law. So A union B intersection C. So it means you need to combine A union B here, and then this intersection symbol as it is, and then take A union C. So this is called distributed law of union over intersection. So here we have the distributed law of intersection over union. So A intersection B union C is A intersection B, and then union A intersection C. So next we have idempotent laws. So idempotent mean the union of A with itself. So A union A, it will be equal to A, and similarly A intersection A will be equal to A. So next is the identity laws. So A union S is the full S set, and A intersection S is only A, and A union empty is A, and A intersection empty is empty. So you can verify all these laws by taking one simple example. So suppose we have set S as 1, 2, 3. So and set A is only 1. So let us take A union S. So union mean combining both elements of A and S. so it will be 1, 2, 3. And if we calculate A intersection S, so it is the common elements of A and S. So there is only one element which is common in both sets, which is 1. So A union S is S, whereas A intersection S is A. So here A union S is S, A intersection S is A. Similarly, if you have another set phi which is an empty set, so you can see that A union empty, so just take the A union empty, so 1 and empty, if you combine both elements you get only 1, which is A. And if we take intersection of A with empty, so you can see that what is common in these two elements? There is nothing common, so it means their intersection is empty, which is phi. So similarly you can verify these commutative properties, commutative laws, associative distributed laws, by assuming any three sets 1, 2, suppose B 2, 3, and suppose C 1, 4, or 1, 2, 4. You can take any sets, it doesn't matter. So suppose we want to verify this commutative law. So it is A union B and B union A. For left hand side, calculate A union B. So combine the elements of A and B. So you will get 1, 2, and 3. And now calculate B union A. So it means you need to combine both B with A. So it is again 1, 2, 3. So from these two results we can say that A union B is same as B union A. Similarly you can see that A intersection B will same as B intersection A, and similarly you can verify the rest of the laws. So next we discuss the complementation laws. So A union A complement is S, A intersection A complement is empty, and A double complement is the set A itself. So you can say that double complement cancels with each other. So complement of space universal set S is empty set, and complement of empty is the universal set. And then we have the De Morgan's laws. So De Morgan's first law is A union B whole complement is equal to A complement intersection B complement. And the De Morgan's second law is A intersection B whole complement is equal to A complement union B complement. So these are some of the basic laws which are very useful while dealing with sets. So next we discuss one very important concept, which is the class of sets. So class of sets mean a set of sets, or we can say that a set having elements, a set whose elements are itself are sets. So let us consider a set A. So you can see that its elements are 1, 2, 3. Set 1, which is itself a set, and another set 2, another set 3. So this set A is the set of different sets. And next concept is power set. A set of all subsets of A is called power set. So suppose we have a set A containing two elements, head and tail. So then first we need to calculate subsets of A. So subsets of A are, remember that empty set is a subset of every set. So first subset is empty. So empty set is contained in every set, so that is the subset. Then this head, so head, this is occurring, or it is lying in this set, so head is subset. Similarly the second set, tail, it is also occurring in this set, and the set, full set itself, head and tail. So these elements are also occurring in this set. So there are the four subsets. So if we construct a new set with these elements, and these elements are subsets of set A. So this new element, start the parenthesis bracket, curly bracket here and close it here. So this is called P of A. P of A is the power set of set A. So similarly, if you have suppose set A 1, 2 and 3. So first calculate subsets of A. So subsets of A are empty set is subset of every set, then set 1, then set 2, then set 3, separate. So then set 1 and 2, then 1, 3, then set 2, 3, and then in the end 1, 2, 3. So you can see that there are 8 subsets of this set A. So if we enclose all these sets within curly braces to construct another set, so then this will be called the power set of set A. So this is how to calculate power set of A. Next concept is Cartesian product of sets. So Cartesian product of sets A and B is denoted by A cross B. It is a set that contains all ordered pairs X and Y, XY, where X belongs to set A and Y belongs to set B. Note that here in this order pair XY, the first element is X, so which should belong to this first set in the Cartesian product. So in the first set in the Cartesian product A cross B is A, so this first element which is X, it should belong to A, whereas the second element Y, it should belong to this second set, so Y belongs to B. So symbolically we write it as A cross B is order pair XY such that X belong to A and Y belong to B. So let us take an example. So suppose A is a set containing 2 elements, head and tail, and B is another set containing 6 elements, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We are interested in calculating the Cartesian product of these two sets, so A cross B. So it means the first element should belong to A and the second element should belong to B. So first take the first element of A, which is head. So construct all possible ordered pairs by keeping the first element as head and the second element from this set B, which can be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it is head 1, head 2, H3, H4, H5, H6. So once you are finished with this first option, then go to the second element. So tail 1, tail 2, T1, T2, T3, T4, T5, T6. So once you are finished with second element, if there is any other element in set A, start with that option. As far as this example is concerned, set A has 2 elements, so it means this is the required Cartesian product. So this is how we can find Cartesian product of any two sets. So next we discuss one very important concept, which is random experiment. So before discussing the concept of random experiment, first we need to know what is an experiment. So experiment means a planned activity or process whose results yield a set of data. So any activity whose results yield any data is called an experiment. So next, another related concept is the trial. A single performance of an experiment is called a trial. So suppose we conducted one experiment one time, so then it is a trial. So suppose you throw a coin once, then it is a trial. So outcome, the result obtained from an experiment or a trial is called an outcome. So suppose you tossed a coin. So while tossing a coin, suppose you obtained the head. So head is the result which is obtained from this experiment. So, it is called, so head is called an outcome. So outcome of the experiment or the result obtained from the experiment or trial is called the outcome. So now we come to the random experiment. An experiment which produces different results even though it is repeated a large number of times under essentially similar conditions is called random experiment. So there are several examples of random experiment. Tossing of a fair coin. So if a coin is fair, you can toss it a number of times. So if you tossed a coin a large number of times, so then you will see that the probability of head will be same as the probability of tail, or 50% of the time the head will occur and the remaining 50% of the time the tail will occur. And remember that this is true only when the coin is fair and the coin is tossed a large number of times under similar conditions. So if the environment or conditions are different, then you may get different results. So similarly, throwing of a balanced die. So you can see that die is has 6 faces, so it is a Ludo die. So usually the children use it to play. So it has 6 faces. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So these are the possible outcomes. So if we throw a die, then actually we are conducting an experiment. So similarly, drawing a card from a well shuffled pack of 52 playing cards, so it is also a random experiment. So next we discuss the concept of sample space. A set consisting of all possible outcomes that can result from a random experiment is called sample space. It is denoted by capital S. Suppose we tossed a coin and it has 2 possible outcomes, head and tail. So in this case the sample space S will be head and tail. So note that we are skipping the case of a coin rolling on its edge. So we are not considering this case. So it means we will get either head or tail. So next concept is sample points. Each possible outcome is a member of sample space and it is called sample point. So here in this case there are 2 possible outcomes, head and tail. So it means there are 2 sample points. So note that the sample points are denoted by N of S. So number of sample points in S. So in this case we have 2 sample points. And if suppose we have another set A, so in that case suppose A is 1, 2, 3. So number of sample points in A, so there are 3 points. So let us consider one simple example. The experiment of tossing a coin results in either of the 2 possible outcomes, a head edge or tail. Rolling on its edge is not considered here, so sample space is head and tail, or sample points are, number of sample points are 2. Similarly, sample space for tossing 2 coins at the same time or tossing a single coin 2 times. So sample space is HH, heads on both coins, then head tail, head on first coin, tail appears in the second, and then tail head, and then tails on the both coins. So here the number of sample points are 4. So in order to get the sample space in case of 2 coins, so write the number of possible outcomes a first coin here as the row heading, and number of possible outcomes of the second coin as the here column heading, and here we have the row headings. So this first box, it is what? It is the intersection of this H and H. So this is our first point which I have written here, head head, and here we have head in horizontal direction, tail in vertical, so head tail, and here we have tail head, and here we have tail tail. So there are 4 possible outcomes when we toss a coin 2 times, or when 2 coins are tossed only once. So similarly, suppose we have a die, so it has 6 faces, ludo जो खेलते हैं बच्चे ज़्यादातर. So S is the sample space, it has 6 faces, 1 2 3 4 5 6. So I'm just drawing it, the ludo die, for your convenience. So we have the number 1, then number 2, number 3, and this has 6 faces, and any of these 6 numbers can appear. So sample space for a die is 1 2 3 4 5 6, and number of sample points in this case are 6. Similarly, sample space for tossing 2 dice or tossing 1 die twice is, it is 1 1 1 2 1 3 1 4 1 5 1 6. So 1 occurs on the first die, whereas the second die, on the second die we have 1 2 3 4 5 and 6. Similarly, 2 occurs on the first die, and 1 2 3 4 5 6. So, and in the end we have 6 occurs on the both dice. So in order to draw this, again we have one very simple rule. So here mention that die 1 or first die, here we have die number 2. So number of possibilities in die 1 are 1 2 3 4 5 6. Number of possibilities in die 2 are 1 2 3 4 5 6. So just draw this box. So this is 1 1. So 1 occurs on both the dice, and it is 1 2, 1 on first, 2 on second, 1 on second, 2 on first. So actually usually it is written as die 2 here, die 1 here. So anyway, so 1 3 1 4 1 5 1 6, then 2 1 2 2 2 3 2 4 2 5 2 6, and in the end we will have 6 on both dice. So from this table you can see that the total number of sample points are 6 into 6. So total number of points are 6 raised to power 2, which is 6 into 6, which is 36. So this is total sample points NS. So here we have NS 6, 1 2 3 4 5 6, or it is 6 power 1 or 6. So similarly, the number of sample points when 3 dice are rolled or 1 die is rolled 3 times, so it will be NS, in that case will be 6 power 3. So which is 6 into 6 into 6, which is 216. So you can see that it is very difficult to draw, to construct all these 216 sample points. So even if we have, so suppose we have 4 dice, so in that case 6 power 4, which is even a bigger number. So for simple cases, 1 die or 2 dice we can draw sample space very conveniently. But when the number of dice or number of sample points increases, then there are different alternative ways which we will use in order to calculate the total number of sample points, but we will not write all those points. So this is one very important point to note. So next concept is an event. An event is an individual outcome or any number of outcomes of a random experiment. So any outcome of a random experiment is called an event. That outcome can be one single outcome or a group of outcomes. So in set terminology, any subset of a sample space S of the experiment is called an event. So for example, let sample space be head and tail containing two elements, then head is an event and tail is another event. And H and T is also an event. So any subset of sample space of the experiment, so currently in this case the experiment is tossing a coin. So sample space will contain two elements, head and tail. So if we focus only on head, so let's say head occurs, so head is an event, or tail occurs, so tail is an event, or suppose we toss the coin two times, so first time we get head, second time we get tail, so this is also an event. So event is what? It is the outcome of an random experiment. So next, mutually exclusive events. These are different types of events. So mutually exclusive means they have nothing in common. So two events A and B of a single experiment are said to be mutually exclusive if and only if. IFF means if and only if. This is usually used in mathematics to write if and only if. So two events A and B of a single experiment are said to be mutually exclusive if and only if they can't occur at the same time, or that is, they have no points in common. So they are mutually exclusive. There is nothing common between the two. So suppose we have tossed a coin and the sample space in this case is head and tail. So let A is the event that head occurs. So A is head occurs means only one possible outcome, which is head, and B is an event, which is another event. It shows that a tail occurs, or B contains only T. So then you can see that there is nothing common between event A and event B. Event A contains head, whereas event B contains tail. So since there is nothing common, so it means we can say that A and B are mutually exclusive events. So another example, suppose we throw a die. So then in this case the sample space is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the all possible outcomes when we throw a balanced die. So suppose event A is that an even number occurs. So in this case even number is 2, 4 and 6. So it means the number of sample points of this event A, the number of possible points of this event A are 2, 4 and 6. And similarly, suppose B is that the event greater than 4. So B is an event which is 4 and greater than 4. So it means the B contains 3 elements, 4, 5 and 6. So B is greater than or equal to 4. So it means 4, 5 and 6. So this is 4 and greater than 4. So we have to include 4 and then 5 which is greater than 4, then 6 which is greater than 4, and 6 is the maximum number. So event A is that even number. So in our sample space there are 3 even numbers, 2, 4, 6. Event B is greater than or equal to 4. It means 4, 5 and 6. So from this case you can see that this 4 is occurring in both events, and similarly 6 is also occurring. So it means now there are two numbers, 4 and 6, both are occurring in both events A and B. So it means there is something common, which are number 4 and number 6. So in this case we will say that A and B are not mutually exclusive events. So two events A and B are said to be not mutually exclusive if they have something in common. So symbolically, mutually exclusive events mean if their intersection is empty, it means there is nothing common, so this means mutually exclusive. And if their intersection is not empty, it means they have something common, then it means that they are not mutually exclusive. So as far as these two events A and B are concerned, you can see that if we calculate their intersection, so event A has only one element, which is head, B has another element, which is tail, so there is nothing common, so it means their intersection is empty. But as far as these two sets are concerned, so their intersection is 2, 4, 6 and 4, 5, 6. So you can see that we have 4 and 6. So this is not empty, so it means this is not equal to empty. So we have some elements which are common to both A and B. So it means in this case the event A and B, they are not mutually exclusive events. Next we have the exhaustive events. So events are said to be collectively exhaustive when union of mutually exclusive events is the entire sample space. So in this case the events will be exhaustive events when they satisfy two conditions. Number one, their intersection is empty. Intersection is empty mean they are mutually exclusive events, and their union is entire sample space. So second condition is that if we take the union, so it gives us the entire sample space. So as in case of Venn diagram, so suppose here we have event A, so this is sample space. So suppose this is event A, the bottom half, and this is event B, the upper half of this triangle. So you can see that there is nothing common in A and B, so it means their intersection is empty. But if you take the union of both events, so this will this will cover the full sample space. So two events are called exhaustive or collectively exhaustive if their intersection is empty, it means they are mutually exclusive events, and their union is the full sample space. So suppose here we have again example of tossing a coin. So sample space is head and tail, and suppose we have two events, event A containing only head, B containing only tail. So you can see that their intersection is empty, so first condition is satisfied. If you take their union, so A union B, so you get head and tail, which is equal to S. So in this case we will say that event A and B are exhaustive events. So another definition is equally likely events. So two events are said to be equally likely when one event is as likely to occur as the other. So it means their chances of occurrence are same, or chances are equal. So suppose in tossing a fair coin, the two events head and tail, they are equally likely. Since the coin is fair, so it means head has same chance of occurrence as the tail has. Similarly, in tossing a balanced die, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all these numbers, they are equally likely, because one is has the same chance of occurrence as the 2, which has same chance of occurrence as 3 and 4, 5, 6. So all the 6 outcomes, they have an equal chance of occurrence. So it means these are all called equally likely events. So next we discuss how to count the sample points. So when the number of sample points in a sample space S is very large, it becomes very inconvenient and difficult to list them all and to count the number of points in the sample space and also in the subsets of S. So we then need some methods or rules which help us to count the number of all sample points without actually listing them. So few of the basic rules frequently used are: number 1, rule of multiplication; number 2, rule of permutation; and number 3, rule of combination. So let us discuss each of these rules one by one. So first we discuss the rule of multiplication. So if a compound experiment consists of 2 experiments, so compound mean an experiment having 2 or more than 2 experiments which are connected, which are collected or combined to get one big experiment. So it is called, the big experiment will be called the compound experiment. So if a compound experiment consists of 2 experiments such that the first experiment has exactly m distinct outcomes, and if corresponding to each outcome of the first experiment there can be n distinct outcomes of the second experiment, so then the compound experiment will have exactly m multiplied with m cross n outcomes. So for example, compound experiment of tossing a coin and throwing a die together, so consists of 2 experiments. First experiment mean coin tossing with 2 distinct outcomes, head and tail, and the die throwing with 6 distinct outcomes, 1 2 3 4 5 6. So since we are doing 2 experiments within one experiment, so it is called a compound experiment. Tossing a coin is one experiment, throwing a die is another experiment. So since these 2 experiments are combined, so they are called the compound experiments. So now question is how we can find the number of sample points. So the total number of possible distinct outcomes or sample points of the compound experiment is 2 into 6. Why? Because there are 2 elements in this 2 sample points in this first experiment, and there are 6 outcomes in the second experiment. So total will be m cross n using this result, so 2 cross 6. So we have 12 outcomes. So we can also verify it by constructing by calculating the Cartesian product of A and B. So event A is head tail, event B is 1 2 3 4 5 6. If you calculate A cross B, the Cartesian product of A and B, remember that the first element should be from A, second element should be from B. So head 1, head 2, h3, h4, h5, h6, and then start with tail t1, t2, t3, 4, 5, 6. So if you calculate number of sample points in A cross B, so they are 12 in number: 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 and 12. So but as we have discussed that if we have large number of observations, then it is very difficult to calculate this Cartesian product as well. So it is actually time consuming job. So this, by using this simple rule, the rule of multiplication, we can calculate, we can find the total number of sample points in the in a compound experiment. Now let us explain the rule of permutation with the help of an example. A club consists of 4 members. So how many sample points are there in the sample space when 3 officers, president, secretary and the treasurer are to be chosen? So note that order in which 3 officers are to be chosen is of importance here. So thus there are 4 choices for the first officer. So out of these 4 members, anyone can be president. So it means as far as the first officer is concerned, there are 4 choices. But since once first officer has been selected, so then there are 3 choices are left for the second officers. So 3 for the second officers, and once the second officer is also selected, a secretary, so then there are 2 choices left for the third officer, and there is no choice for the fourth one. So hence the total number of sample points are 4, 3, 2, 1. So which is 4, 3, 12 to 24. So we can calculate these total number of sample points using this rule of permutation. So using rule of permutations, n is the total number, which is 4. Out of 4 we want to select 3 officers, so it is 4 factorial, 4 minus 3 whole factorial. So 4 minus 3 is 1 factorial, so 1 factorial is 1, so 4 factorial is 4, 3, 2, 1, so it is 24. So remember that 1 factorial is 1, so 24 over 1 is 24. So it means there are 24 possible sample points. So next we discuss the rule of combination. A combination is any subset of R objects selected without regard to their order. Remember that while discussing permutation, we discussed that order matters. But if order does not matter, then we can use rule of combinations. So if we want to select R objects out of n distinct objects, we can use rule of combinations. So total number of such combination is denoted by NCR. C stands for combinations, or NR, and it is given by NCR is n factorial R factorial n minus R whole factorial. So let us explain this idea with the help of one simple example. A 3-person committee is to be formed from a list of 4 persons. So we have 4 persons, we need to select a committee of 3 persons out of 4. So how many sample points are associated with this experiment? So we can see that there is no order required in this case, or it is not mentioned that order is important. So it means we can use the rule of combination to calculate the total number of sample points. So the total number of combinations or sample points are the 4 members. Out of 4 we need to select 3, so 4C3, it is 4 factorial divided by 3 factorial into 4 minus 3 whole factorial. So we can simplify it further. So this is 4 factorial is as it is, so 3 factorial, and 4 minus 3 is 1 factorial. So we have 4 factorial as it is, and here we have 3 factorial, this 1 factorial is 1. So 4 factorial, you know that 4 into 3 into 2 into 1, and 3 factorial is 3 into 2 into 1. So this is cancelled with this, so result is 4. So it means total number of sample points are 4 here. So let us review the main concepts which we have discussed in today's lecture. So in today's session we have discussed how to describe a frequency distributions using 5 quantities: the total number of observations in the data, a measure of central tendency like mean, median and mode, a measure of dispersion which gives us the spread of the observations around the mean value, and the measure of skewness which gives us an idea of asymmetry of the distributions, and a measure of the kurtosis which gives us the idea of peakedness of a curve. So then we discussed the introduction to probability, and then we discussed some basic concepts which are required for the probability, and in particular we discussed some basic functions, basic concepts related to set theory, and we discussed some of the basic concepts related to probability. So in the next lecture we will discuss some laws of probability, we will discuss properties of a probability, and we will discuss several examples related to probability. So in the next lecture we will discuss laws of probability, and we will discuss sorry. So in the next lecture we will define the probability in a proper way, then we will discuss the properties of the probability, and then we will discuss some of the main important laws of the probability, and then we will also discuss some of the basic examples related to probability concepts. So till then, Allah Hafiz.